On the 28th of July, Magic the Gathering's historic format changed forever. New powerhouse cards were added to the format, which will inevitably warp the meta. In this video, I'm going to show you the top 5 best new decks to conquer the early meta.
Victory!
Starting us off, we have Zorious Artifacts. This deck was already powerful before the Anthologies came out, with cards like Nettlecyst and Karn creating really large artifacts, whilst also being resilient to most removal spells because they're equipments and planeswalkers. But in Soul Artifact is the real reason this deck has become so strong, because it's another consistent early threat. This deck also gained 2 indestructible artifact lands, which are really good targets for the Ensoul Artifact. The artifact lands help you with affinity cards like Fault Monitor, which alongside Esper Sentinel is the glue holding the deck together. They give you the card advantage needed to consistently draw into one of your powerful threats.
Victory!
Everyone's been waiting for the Tarmogoyf deck, and we have Boomer Jun. Alongside Tarmogoyf, the Anthologies also gave us Kalitas. Now, Kalitas was one of the things the deck really needed to help you recover some card advantage after burning through a load of 1-for-1 spells. And thanks to Goyf, this is the first historic deck that makes you feel like you're playing a modern deck. Admittedly, I was concerned he wouldn't get big enough, fast enough without fetches, but after a lot of testing, this really isn't a problem. The deck runs pioneer powerhouses like Fable of the Mirror Breaker and Chandra Torch of Defiance, both of which ramp, gain card advantage, and are threats in their own right. But on top of this, there are 2 slightly more niche card types to fuel your Goyf. To round the deck off, we have Seasoned Pyromancer, which is an insanely good card. It helps you to dig for whatever answer you need, whilst also providing a lot of small bodies to protect you for as long as you need it. Additionally, my sleeper underrated pick for this deck is Elder Gargaroth, which is positioned very well in this meta. Most of the current removal spells can't actually kill it, and once the beast blocks or attacks just a couple of times, you've normally won the game, or at least stabilized.
Victory!
The next historic deck is Azorious Control. We already had a selection of board wipes to choose from, but Supreme Verdict is a new Anthologies card. Being uncounterable is really important versus decks like Azorious Artifacts and Mono Blue Spirits. It's also worth noting that Farewell is a really good inclusion because it can exile indestructible artifacts and hexproof enchantments. Personally, I love the versatility Azorious Control has, opting to use a mix of different board wipes in order to target different metas. Now, March of Otherworldly Light notably exiles many types of permanents, whilst Fatal Absence hits most creatures at such an efficient mana cost. We also have Archmage's Charm, which is one of the best magic counterspells to date. It's just so versatile. The other counterspells, once again, shift in and out dependent on the meta. Rounding the deck out, we have 2 powerful planeswalkers and an army of sharks. Early game, they can be considered a pseudo removal spell or card advantage to help you control the game, but they really start to shine once you've successfully gained control of the game, helping you to close the games extremely quickly. That is if your opponent doesn't concede first.
Victory!
Niv Mizik was a fringe deck before the Anthologies and nearly didn't make this list. The namesake card Niv Mizik requires you to build your deck with multicolored guilds in mind to maximize its effect, but if done correctly, he's a card advantage king. But first, it's vital you understand the importance of widespread thieving and growth spiral. These cards firstly ramp you, but secondly fix your colours, helping you to achieve your 5 colour goals, which is admittedly made easier with all of the different types of 3 colour cycle lands we now have access to. Now once again, Supreme Verdict is a really important addition, mainly because it's a multicoloured board wipe, and Niv Mizik can dig for a copy of the card, allowing the deck to lean on its control aspects a little bit more when it needs to. However, the deck does still lean on its territorial Karvu mid-range core most of the time, allowing the deck to apply pressure early on in matchups where it needs to. Additionally, the deck gains Siege Rhino, which admittedly can't be drawn with Niv Mizik, but it is so much more important than you'd think. Because we have the Rhinos, you can now drop the clunky win conditions we used to have to run, which you hated to draw early on. Now instead we use Siege Rhino, which stabilizes early on, but it also ends the game very quickly when you get to that point.
Victory!
And finally, The last deck is Celestia Humans. This is the first deck that skyrocketed to arguably the best deck because of the recent nerfs to the Food Sacrifice and Phoenix decks, rather than gaining new Anthology cards. Since their nerfs, they have been way less relevant in the meta, allowing Celestia Humans to breathe. Thalia's Lieutenant is a very powerful signature human, even in modern lists. Alongside cards like Adeline, you can quickly build up a lot of pressure on your opponents, defeating them very quickly. Usually aggro decks like this one will lose to board wipes, and there's quite a few of them floating about right now. But thanks to Esper Sentinel and Thalia, the board wipes come out a little bit later, giving you just enough time to push in that little bit of extra damage. Then the incredibly powerful top end of Inquisitor Captain and Collected Company enables you to recover if your opponent does manage to clear your board. But equally, these cards are really good at going over the top in other matchups where your opponent builds a large wall. Yes, I'm looking at you, Siege Rhino. Personally, I think that right now, Humans is the deck to beat, so long as it's piloted correctly. It has answers to whatever your opponent throws at you, and ends the games really fast.
Victory!
On July 28th, Historic changed forever. Make sure you comment down below which deck you're going to use to conquer the new meta.